The wooden rolling pin cracked against my cheekbone with a sound like a thunderclap in a silent kitchen, splintering the air and sending stars exploding behind my eyelids. Pain bloomed hot and immediate, a white-hot lance that radiated down my jaw, tasting metallic as blood filled my mouth. I staggered back, my hands flying up instinctively, but Margaret's face, twisted in a mask of righteous fury, loomed closer, her knuckles white around the flour-dusted handle. "You little whore," she snarled, her voice a venomous hiss that cut through the haze of shock. "You think you can destroy my family? Get out before I finish what I started." Her eyes, so like her son's, cold blue and unyielding, bore into me, and in that instant, humiliation crashed over me like a wave, drowning the fury rising in my chest. I didn't scream. I didn't fight back. Not yet. But as I touched the swelling skin, feeling the sticky warmth of my own blood, a seed of something dark and unyielding took root in my soul. Revenge, cold and patient, whispering promises of panic in her eyes. I fled the house that afternoon, the door slamming behind me like a final judgment. The autumn wind whipped at my face, stinging the fresh bruise, as I stumbled down the porch steps of the old Victorian home that had once felt like a sanctuary. Alex's car wasn't in the driveway. He was probably still at work, oblivious or complicit. I couldn't decide which hurt more. My mind raced, replaying the confrontation in fractured bursts. The way I'd burst into the kitchen, clutching the printed emails I'd found on his laptop, proof of his affair with that coworker, Sarah. "How long have you known?" I demanded of Margaret, who was kneading dough at the counter, her back to me. She hadn't even flinched. "Long enough to know you're not good enough for him," she'd said calmly, wiping her hands on her apron before turning. And then the swing, swift, deliberate, as if she'd been waiting for this moment. Driving home, my hands trembled on the steering wheel, the rearview mirror reflecting a stranger's face. One side puffed and purpling, a thin trickle of blood drying at the corner of my lip. Heartbreak clawed at my throat, raw and unrelenting. Alex and I had been together for 3 years. 3 years of whispered futures, shared dreams, and that intoxicating sense of belonging. He'd introduced me to his mother early on, and I'd mistaken her polite smiles for approval. But now the pieces clicked into place. The subtle digs at family dinners, the way she'd steer conversations toward his exes, the accidental invitations to events where Sarah just happened to be. Betrayal wasn't just Alex's infidelity. It was Margaret's orchestration, her quiet sabotage of our life together. Resentment festered, hot and bitter, as I pulled into my apartment parking lot. How dare she? How dare she lay hands on me, as if I were the intruder in her perfect world? Inside, the silence of my one bedroom felt oppressive, the walls closing in like judgmental eyes. I sank onto the couch, pressing an ice pack to my face, but the cold did nothing to numb the storm inside. Denial crept in first, a pathetic whisper that maybe I'd misread the emails, that Alex would call any minute with explanations, apologies. But my phone stayed silent, the screen mocking me with its blank notifications. I scrolled through our old texts instead, each heart emoji and "I love you" twisting the knife deeper. Heartbreak morphed into obsession. I imagined confronting him, screaming until my voice broke, or worse, picturing Margaret's smug face crumpling in fear. What could I do to her? Something that hit where it hurt. Her pristine reputation, her ironclad control over her son's life. Guilt flickered at the edges of my thoughts. Was I really this person? The girl who'd grown up in a broken home, vowing never to let anger consume her. But the bruise throbbed, a constant reminder, and doubt gave way to fantasies of justice. I paced the living room, the carpet muffling my footsteps, as the sun dipped low, casting long shadows that danced like accusing fingers. The air smelled faintly of yesterday's takeout, stale and forgotten, mirroring the decay in my heart. By nightfall, resentment had hardened into resolve. I wouldn't go to the police, that would be too public, too messy for someone like Margaret, who volunteered at the church and hosted neighborhood book clubs. No, my revenge needed to be personal, surgical, something that exposed her hypocrisy without dragging me down. The next morning I called in sick to work, my voice hoarse from unshed tears. Alex finally texted. Mom said you freaked out. We need to talk. No apology, no concern for the welt on my face. Fury surged, but I typed back calmly. Sure. Dinner tonight. He agreed, and as I hung up, a plan began to form, tentative, laced with fear. What if it backfired? What if I lost everything? But the moral conflict gnawed at me. An eye for an eye, or turn the other cheek. I chose the former, my hands steady as I rifled through old boxes in my closet, searching for leverage. Years ago, during a tipsy family gathering, Margaret had let slip a secret. Her husband's business trips that weren't business at all. I dismissed it then, but now it was ammunition. I met Alex at our favorite Italian place, the dim lighting hiding the fading bruise under makeup. The scent of garlic and fresh bread wafted through the air, but it turned my stomach. He looked guilty at least. His eyes darting, fingers drumming on the tablecloth. Emily, I didn't mean for this to happen, he started, his voice low. Sarah. It was a mistake. I forced a smile, suppressing the rage bubbling beneath. Your mom knew, didn't she? He shifted uncomfortably. She introduced us at that charity event. But she didn't encourage it. Liar. The words hung unsaid, tension thickening the air like smoke. I leaned in, my voice sweet as poison. Tell me about your family, Alex. Really tell me. Like why your dad left. His face paled slightly, but he brushed it off. Old history. Not relevant. Subtle hints, I reminded myself. Slow burn, not explosion. Over the following days, obsession took hold. I shadowed Margaret discreetly, parking down the street from her house, watching her routine through binoculars from my car. The neighborhood was idyllic. Manicured lawns, children laughing on bikes, but it felt like a facade, brittle and ready to crack. She gardened in the mornings, her gloves pristine, humming hymns that carried on the breeze. Afternoons, she drove to the community center, her smile fixed like a mask. Each observation fueled my planning. Her vulnerabilities, her secrets. Inner doubt plagued me. Was this madness? Stalking an old woman? But humiliation replayed in my mind, the crack of wood on flesh, and resolve steeled. I dug deeper online, unearthing old records. A hushed divorce, whispers of infidelity. Margaret's husband hadn't left. She'd driven him away with her own affair, buried under layers of church-going piety. One evening, as rain pattered against my window, I confronted my reflection in the mirror. The bruise had yellowed, a fading badge of her violence. Guilt twisted in my gut. What if revenge made me no better than her? But resentment won out, cold and calculating. I drafted an anonymous letter, words dripping with truth. Details of her past, threats to expose them to her social circle. Fear gripped me as I sealed the envelope, moral conflict raging. Was this justice or cruelty? I hesitated, but the memory of her snarl pushed me forward. I mailed it the next day, heart pounding, the post office's fluorescent lights buzzing like accusations overhead. Weeks blurred into a haze of quiet tension. Alex and I reconciled, a fragile truce built on lies. I visited their home again, smiling through gritted teeth as Margaret eyed me warily over tea. How's your face, dear? She asked, her tone laced with false concern. Fine, I replied evenly, my pulse thundering. Accidents happen. Suppressed rage simmered in her gaze, but she said nothing, the china clinking delicately in the strained silence. Hints of my plan emerged in subtle ways. A knowing glance, a casual mention of family skeletons. She grew edgier, jumping at shadows, her once steady hands trembling as she poured sugar. Inner thoughts warred constantly, obsession driving me to rehearse scenarios in my mind, doubt whispering retreats. What if she called my bluff? What if Alex found out? But heartbreak fueled me, a relentless engine. One night, alone in bed, sheets tangled around me like restraints, I dreamed of her panic. Eyes wide, breath shallow, the control she'd wielded shattering. It was intoxicating, a balm to my wounded pride. By now, the letter had arrived. I knew from the way she avoided my calls. Her voice clipped when Alex handed her the phone. Suspense built, slow and inexorable, each day a step closer to the edge. Finally, the confrontation loomed. Alex invited me for dinner, the air thick with unspoken dread. As I entered the kitchen, the same spot where she'd struck me, the scent of roasting chicken mingled with tension. Margaret stood at the stove, her back rigid, a new rolling pin gleaming on the counter like a threat. "Emily," she said tightly, not turning. "We need to talk. Alone." My heart raced, but I nodded, following her to the study. The door clicked shut, sealing us in dim lamplight, bookshelves looming like witnesses. "What do you want?" she demanded, her voice cracking for the first time. I met her eyes, cold resolve settling over me. "Justice," I whispered, pulling out my phone with the evidence I'd gathered. Photos, records, everything. Her face drained of color, panic flickering as she realized the depth of my betrayal. But this was just the beginning. Margaret's hands clenched at her sides, the veins bulging like twisted roots under papery skin. The study smelled of dust and old leather, the ticking clock on the wall amplifying the silence between us. "You wouldn't dare," she hissed, but her voice wavered, betraying the fear I'd craved. I held up my phone, the screen glowing with scanned documents. Court filings from her divorce, emails from her lover, all pieced together from public records and a private investigator I'd hired in a fit of obsession. "Oh, I would," I replied, my tone even, laced with the resentment that had simmered for weeks. "Imagine the church ladies whispering, 'Alex learning his perfect mother is a fraud.'" Panic flashed in her eyes, raw and unfiltered, her breath coming in short gasps. She lunged for the phone, but I stepped back, the movement sending a lamp teetering. In that instant, guilt stabbed at me. Was this too far? But the memory of the rolling pin, the humiliation, crushed it down. She collapsed into an armchair, her face ashen, hands trembling as she covered her mouth. How did you find this?" Her words were a whisper, stripped of the authority she'd wielded like a weapon. I leaned against the desk, the wood cool under my palms, and let the truth spill out. "You made it easy, Margaret. All those hints over the years, the bitter comments about your ex, the way you control Alex like he's still a child. I just connected the dots." Inner conflict raged. Part of me reveled in her breakdown, the poetic justice of turning her secrets against her, but doubt whispered of consequences. What if this destroyed Alex too? Heartbreak twisted anew. He'd betrayed me, yet some foolish part still loved him. As she sobbed quietly, the sound muffled and pathetic, suspense coiled tighter. Alex would be home soon. The dinner timer buzzed faintly from the kitchen. "Please," she begged, her eyes pleading. "I'll make him end it with Sarah. I'll bless your marriage." Manipulation dripped from her words, but it rang hollow now. I shook my head, cold resolve hardening. "It's too late for that. You hit me, Margaret. You tried to break me." The words hung heavy, charged with fury. She rose unsteadily, reaching out as if to touch me, but I flinched away. "I was protecting my son," she murmured, her voice breaking. "From you, from someone who digs up dirt like this." Moral grayness settled over the room. Her motivations weren't pure evil, just a mother's warped love, but it didn't excuse the violence. Footsteps echoed in the hall. Alex, calling out cheerfully. Panic surged in her anew, her eyes darting to the door. "Don't tell him," she whispered urgently. I pocketed my phone, a small smile playing on my lips despite the turmoil inside. "That depends on you." We emerged into the kitchen, the air thick with the scent of overcooked meat, tension crackling like static. Alex kissed my cheek, oblivious, but his gaze lingered on his mother's pale face. "Everything okay?" he asked, pouring wine with forced casualness. Margaret nodded jerkily, her hands fumbling with plates. Dinner unfolded in agonizing slowness, forks scraping china, conversations stilted and revealing. "Remember that family trip to the lake?" Alex said, trying to lighten the mood. Margaret forced a laugh, but it cracked, her eyes flicking to me with suppressed rage. As the meal dragged on, subtle hints of vengeance emerged. I mentioned old photos I'd found online, watching her squirm. Your wedding album was lovely, Margaret. Such a shame about the aftermath. She choked on her wine, coughing violently, while Alex patted her back, confused. Obsession had me scripted, each word a calculated jab, building toward the reveal. But guilt gnawed deeper. This wasn't just revenge. It was unraveling a family. Later, as Alex cleared dishes, Margaret cornered me in the pantry, the shelves lined with canned goods casting eerie shadows. "What do you want from me?" she demanded in a fierce whisper. "Money. An apology." I met her gaze, heartbreak fueling my response. "I want you to feel what I felt, humiliated, exposed." Her breath hitched, panic etching lines on her face. That night, driving home through rain-slick streets, reflections blurring in the windshield, doubt overwhelmed me. Had I become the monster? Fantasies of justice had sustained me, but now they felt tainted by resentment. I pulled over, tears streaming, the wipers thumping like a heartbeat. Moral conflict peaked. Revenge might heal my wounds, but at what cost? Yet resolve returned with dawn's light. I compiled everything into an email. Anonymous, addressed to her church group, Alex's colleagues, the whole web of her life. Fingers hovered over send, fear gripping my chest. One click and it was done. The fallout began subtly. Calls from Alex frantic. "Mom's acting weird, won't leave the house." I feigned concern, visiting under pretense. The house felt different now. Curtains drawn, air stale with unspoken dread. Margaret answered the door, her eyes hollow, makeup unable to hide the tremor in her lips. "You did this," she accused softly as we sat in the living room, sunlight filtering through cracks like judgment. I didn't deny it. Secrets have a way of surfacing. Dialogue sharpened the tension. Her pleas turning to threats, my responses calm, revealing her desperation. "I'll tell Alex everything about your stalking, your lies," she spat. But I smiled. "He already knows parts. And he chose me." Suspense crested as hidden motives unraveled. Alex confessed over coffee. "Mom pushed me toward Sarah to break us up. She thought you were beneath us." Betrayal deepened, but so did understanding. His weakness, her control. I forgave him tentatively. Our reconciliation a fragile bridge over the abyss. But Margaret's panic escalated. Whispers spread, her social circle fracturing. One evening she called me, voice slurred with wine or pills. "Stop it. Please." Guilt surged, but I hung up cold. The climax struck like lightning. At a family gathering, forced, tense, Margaret cornered me in the backyard, the grill's smoke curling like omens. "I know what you did," she whispered, pulling an envelope from her purse. "My own secrets dug up in retaliation, my past abortion hidden from Alex." Shock hit me, fury mingling with fear. "Mutually assured destruction," she said, a mad gleam in her eye. But I laughed, brittle and unhinged. "Go ahead. But remember, I have more." In a flash, she swung at me again, but I caught her wrist, twisting until she yelped. Panic consumed her fully, eyes wide as I leaned in. "You started this. Now watch it end." The twist unfolded. I didn't send the final expose. Instead, I handed everything to Alex, letting him choose. He confronted her, the house echoing with shouts. Heartbreak, rage, revelations. Margaret broke, confessing her affair, her manipulations, crumbling into sobs. Poetic justice. Her control shattered by truth, not malice. But unexpected consequences lingered. Alex distanced himself from us both, guilt-ridden. I walked away, revenge bittersweet, haunted by the moral gray. In the end, the panic in her eyes was mine too, a mirror of obsession's cost. Yet in the quiet aftermath, resolve faded to peace, the bruise long healed, but the scars eternal.